North America is enormous, and tucked inside it are towns that didn't get the memo on being normal. Some of them are strange by design, some by accident, and some just kept going in a direction no one else followed. These are North America. 15 weird towns you didn't know. Number 15, Boring, Oregon. Boring, Oregon sits about 20 miles southeast of Portland and has approximately 8,000 residents who have spent decades making peace with having the dullest mailing address in the Pacific Northwest. The town was named after William Harrison Boring, a Civil War veteran who settled in the area in the 1870s. He presumably did not name it after himself as a self-critique. What Boring did with its name is actually a reasonable study in small-town self-awareness. In 2012, Boring officially partnered with Dull, a village in Perthshire, Scotland, in what the two communities described as a sister city relationship celebrating the unremarkable. The pairing generated international media coverage, which is either deeply ironic or perfectly logical. In 2013, a town in Australia called Blandshire requested to join the partnership, and the trio has maintained a low-key but genuine cultural exchange ever since. The town hosts an annual Boring and Dull Day celebration each August. The festivities are not, by most accounts, particularly wild. The town sign, which reads, "The most exciting town in Oregon / established 1903, has been photographed by travelers stopping off the highway for decades. Boring has a decent farmer's market, a winery, and a general absence of the self-consciousness that usually accompanies places that trade on their own joke. The residents appear to find all of it moderately amusing and mostly beside the point." Number 14, Dildo, Newfoundland, Canada. Dildo is a small town on the island of Newfoundland, Canada, with a population of roughly 1,200 people and a name that has survived every attempt to change it, and there have been several. The origin of the name is genuinely disputed. Theories include a Portuguese word meaning something along the lines of a long and narrow bay, a Spanish term used in early maritime navigation, or simply a corruption of an older name that has been lost to time. None of these explanations have been definitively confirmed. What is confirmed is that Dildo has rejected multiple formal proposals to rename the town, most recently in the early 2000s, when a vote among residents produced a clear majority in favor of keeping the name exactly as it is. The town's position, stated plainly by various local officials over the years, is that the name is part of their identity and their history, and changing it to accommodate outside discomfort is not their problem. The town has a small museum focused on the local fishing and whaling history of Trinity Bay, a summer tourism trade built largely around whale watching, and an annual Dildo Days festival each August. Comedian Jimmy Kimmel visited in 2019 for a segment that the town engaged with cheerfully. The mayor at the time wore a sash identifying him as the town's representative and appeared entirely unbothered. Dildo is, by all accounts, a perfectly pleasant coastal community that simply has a name that makes people stop scrolling. Trinity Bay, where the town sits, has been fished by residents for generations. The whale watching operations that run out of Dildo in summer attract visitors who come for the humpbacks and minkies that move through the bay, and who may also come for the novelty of the address, but stay for the scenery. The town has made a quiet peace with its fame, which is not the same thing as being defined by it. Number 13, Hell, Michigan. Hell, Michigan, incorporated as a community in the 19th century and has been enthusiastically leaning into its name ever since. It sits in Livingston County, about 60 miles west of Detroit, with a population in the low hundreds. The origin of the name is somewhat murky. Local legend attributes it to a German immigrant who, when asked what the settlers intended to call the place, reportedly said something along the lines of, "They can call it hell for all I care," and someone apparently took that as a formal suggestion. Hell has a post office, which means you can send mail postmarked from hell, which is the kind of thing that never quite gets old at birthday parties. The post office reportedly does significant seasonal business around Valentine's Day, when people mail cards from hell for reasons that require no further explanation. The town also reportedly freezes over at least metaphorically in winter, allowing locals to confirm that yes, hell has in fact frozen over, as needed. The community leans fully into the tourism potential of its name. There is a hell in a handbasket gift shop. There is a dam near the town, which locals refer to as the dam site, pronounced with deliberate intent. The town hosts a Hellfest each year and markets itself aggressively to visitors who want a photograph next to the town sign. It is a small, relatively quiet community that has built a modest but functional tourism economy entirely out of the comedy value of its name. Respect is the appropriate response. Number 12. Intercourse, Pennsylvania. Intercourse is a small community in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, sitting in the heart of the Pennsylvania Dutch country. It has a population of around 1,200 and is surrounded by Amish farmland, craft shops, and tourists who stop primarily to photograph the sign. The name dates to at least 1754, and its origins are debated. Some historians trace it to an Old English usage of the word meaning communication or commerce between communities, a perfectly standard term in the 18th century that has since acquired alternative connotations. The community has not changed its name and shows no particular intention to do so. It exists alongside neighboring communities with names including Bird in Hand and Blue Ball, all of which are real places and all of which share a zip code area that generates a steady stream of map-based jokes online. What Intercourse actually is, beneath the name tourism, is a functioning Amish and Mennonite community center with genuine craft traditions, working farms, and an economy built around handmade furniture, quilts, and baked goods that are, by multiple accounts, legitimately excellent. The Kitchen Kettle Village is a local shopping complex that has operated since 1954 and draws visitors for reasons beyond the sign. The Amish and Mennonite communities that anchor the area have lived there for generations and have a notably measured relationship with the outside world's fascination with their town's name. Lancaster County as a whole draws over 8 million tourists annually, one of the most visited rural counties in the United States, and a significant portion of that traffic passes through or near Intercourse. The local economy runs on quilts, furniture, fresh produce, and baked goods produced by craftspeople and farmers who have been doing this work the same way for 2 centuries. The name is a side note to all of that. A funny one, granted, but a side note. Number 11. Accident, Maryland. Accident is a small town in Garrett County in the western Maryland Panhandle with a population of around 300 people. It was named, according to the most commonly cited account, after a surveying error in the 1750s. 2 separate survey parties, working independently and without knowledge of each other, both marked the same large white oak tree as the starting point of their respective land claims. When the overlap was discovered, the tree, and eventually the town that grew near it, became known as the Accident Tract. The name stuck. Accident has a post office, an elementary school, and the distinction of being one of the few American towns named after a clerical mistake. The town holds an annual Heritage Days celebration that leans into its unusual origin story with good humor. Local businesses have adopted the name with varying degrees of creativity. There is, or has been, an Accident Antiques and Accident Volunteer Fire Company, which raises certain associations that the volunteers presumably take in stride. The area surrounding Accident is genuinely beautiful. Garrett County sits in the Appalachian Mountains and contains Deep Creek Lake, the largest freshwater lake in Maryland. The town is small enough that the name is its primary point of external recognition, but the surrounding region draws substantial outdoor tourism that has nothing to do with nomenclature. Number 10. Climax, Michigan. Climax is a township in Kalamazoo County, Michigan, with a history going back to the early 19th century and a name that has generated consistent amusement ever since. The township was organized in 1827 and named, according to most historical accounts, after the rhetorical device, a term indicating the high point of something, which was a fashionable naming convention in the early American Republic when abstract nouns were frequently applied to new settlements in the expectation that they would, presumably, achieve great things. What Climax actually became is a quiet agricultural township with a population of roughly 7,000 spread across farmland and small residential areas. There is no dramatic story here, no famous residents, no remarkable events, no particular reason beyond the name for the outside world to pay attention. The township has a fire department, some light industrial activity, and the Climax Kalamazoo Airport. The airport's identifier code is KKLM, which is a detail that exists independently of the name jokes, but somehow fits. Michigan, it should be noted, also contains the towns of Climax, Boring, Hell, and Colon. The latter a small community in St. Joseph County that hosts an annual magic festival and is the longtime home of Abbott's Magic Company, one of the oldest magic supply businesses in the United States. Michigan's municipal naming history is a topic that rewards exploration. Number 9. Why Arizona? Why Arizona sits in Pima County near the Mexican border at the junction of state routes 85 and 86. The population is approximately 120 people, making it one of the smaller communities on this list, and one of the more straightforwardly named in the sense that the name actually does tell you something useful. The town was originally called Y because of the Y-shaped road junction at its center. Arizona law at the time required place names to contain at least 3 letters, so Y became Y. That is, in its entirety, the explanation. Y has a gas station, a small grocery store, the Why Not gift shop. The naming committee was clearly having a good day, and a population that fluctuates significantly between summer and winter due to the area's popularity with snowbirds escaping colder northern climates. The surrounding Sonoran Desert is genuinely striking, and the area is close to Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, which draws visitors who pass through Y because it is literally on the way. The town periodically appears on lists of unusually named American places and has a quiet, practical relationship with its own peculiarity. Nobody in Y seems to have strong feelings about the name either way, which is probably the correct level of engagement. Pima County, where Y sits, has a remarkable concentration of natural and cultural landmarks within a reasonable drive. Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument to the south, Kit Peak National Observatory to the east, and the Tohono O'odham Nations lands surrounding much of the region. The Sonoran Desert around Y is one of the most biologically diverse desert ecosystems in North America, with a spring wildflower season that draws photographers from across the country. Y is, in other words, a genuinely useful place to be if you are exploring southwestern Arizona, independent of what it is called. Number 8. Chicken, Alaska. Chicken, Alaska is a small community in the eastern interior of Alaska with a year-round population of approximately 7 people. 7. The summer population rises, as it does in many remote Alaskan communities, when seasonal workers arrive for mining and tourism activity. The winter population of 7 is not a typo. The name comes from the ptarmigan, a bird common in the region that early settlers relied on as a food source. The settlers wanted to name the town Ptarmigan, which was reasonable, but nobody could agree on how to spell it, which, in fairness, is a legitimate concern. So they compromised on chicken, which is close enough in spirit, if not in species. Chicken has a saloon, a general store, a gift shop, and a post office that operates seasonally. The post office is a significant attraction in itself. Getting mail postmarked from Chicken, Alaska, is considered a modest achievement by collectors of postmarks from unusually named places. The community sits along the Taylor Highway, which is unpaved in sections and closed in winter. Getting to Chicken requires either driving a gravel road or flying in by small aircraft, which is not a distinction that discourages the visitors who are determined to get there. Gold mining has continued in the area around Chicken in small-scale operations since the Klondike era. Number 7. Toadsuck, Arkansas. Toadsuck is an unincorporated community in Faulkner County, Arkansas, along the Arkansas River. The name dates to the early 19th century and is attributed, by most historical accounts, to a tavern that operated at a river crossing where boatmen waiting for the river levels to permit passage would reportedly drink until they swelled up like toads. Hence, Toad Suck. It is not the most flattering origin story, but it is a specific one. The Toad Suck ferry no longer operates, a bridge replaced it, but the name lives on, most visibly through the Toad Suck Days Festival, held annually in the spring in the nearby city of Conway. Toad Suck Days is one of the larger festivals in Arkansas, drawing tens of thousands of visitors each year and raising funds for college scholarships through the Faulkner County Literacy Council. The festival has been running since 1982. The scholarship program has reportedly awarded millions of dollars to local students over the decades. There is something genuinely decent about a community that took a name originally attached to a tavern full of bloated riverboatmen and turned it into a scholarship fundraiser. Whatever Toad Suck was in 1820, by 2024, it is funding higher education, which is a trajectory nobody involved in the original naming was likely anticipating. Conway, the city that hosts Toad Suck Days, is a university town, home to the University of Central Arkansas, Hendrix College, and Central Baptist College. And the festival has become a genuine community institution. The Arkansas River, which prompted the original ferry and tavern, runs through a landscape that today includes significant wildlife management areas and recreation opportunities along its length. Toad Suck Park, a city park in Conway along the river, hosts the festival grounds and is otherwise a pleasant green space that owes its name to a bunch of riverboatmen who had a problem with moderation. Number 6. Dead Horse, Alaska. Dead Horse is an unincorporated community at the top of the Dalton Highway in northern Alaska, sitting on the edge of Prudhoe Bay and the Arctic Ocean. It exists for one reason: oil. Prudhoe Bay is the largest oil field in North America, and Dead Horse is the industrial support community that services it. The population fluctuates between roughly 2,000 and 5,000, depending on current operations, and almost all of those residents are there to work, not to settle. The origin of the name is disputed and somewhat obscure. Various accounts attribute it to a pack horse that died hauling supplies in the area during earlier surveying or construction work, though no single definitive incident has been confirmed. Whatever the origin, the name fits the place. Dead Horse is not trying to be appealing. It is an oil industry service hub inside the Arctic Circle, where the sun does not rise for weeks in winter and does not set for weeks in summer. There is a hotel, a general store, a post office, and a checkpoint where visitors on the Dalton Highway, a road that draws adventure motorcyclists and overlanders from around the world, can get a certificate confirming they reached the Arctic Ocean. The ocean itself is technically accessible from Dead Horse, though visitors must take an organized tour to reach the shore because the surrounding land belongs to the oil field operations. The Dalton Highway, which connects Dead Horse to Fairbanks across 414 miles of largely unpaved road, is one of the more demanding drives in North America. It crosses the Brooks Range, passes through some of the most remote terrain on the continent, and offers essentially no services for stretches of 100 miles or more. The truckers who supply Prudhoe Bay run this road year-round, including in winter when temperatures can drop to -60 Fahrenheit. The adventurers who drive it in summer for the experience are, by most truckers' accounts, a persistent logistical complication. Dead Horse is the end of the road in the most literal possible sense, and the road itself is the kind of thing that reminds you how much of Alaska is still genuinely not set up for casual visitors. Number 5. Boring, dull, and bland. The International Sister City Trifecta. This entry is technically not one town, but 3, because they deserve to be considered as a group. Boring, Oregon, met Dull, Scotland, in 2012, and formalized their partnership in the way that small communities with unusual names do when the internet discovers them, with a combination of genuine civic warmth and awareness that the joke writes itself. Blandshire in New South Wales, Australia, applied to join in 2013 and was welcomed into what the 3 communities began calling the League of Extraordinary Communities. The League has since added Dull's sister community of Monotony, also in Scotland, and briefly entertained an application from Blah, a location in Papua New Guinea. What is actually interesting about this arrangement, beyond the obvious, is that it functions. The communities exchange visitors, hold joint celebrations, and have used the partnership to draw tourism that each town individually would not have been able to attract. Boring, Oregon, gets visitors from Scotland who would never otherwise have made the trip. Dull, which has a population of about 84 people, has received more international media coverage than most Scottish villages 10 times its size. The League of Extraordinary Communities is, by the standards of municipal international relations, a genuine success story built entirely on the shared dignity of being spectacularly unremarkable. Number 4. Wynot, North Carolina. Wynot is an unincorporated community in Randolph County, North Carolina, and its name has an origin story that various sources attribute to different versions of the same basic situation. Settlers in the area could not agree on a name for their community. The debate had gone on too long, and someone eventually suggested that they should just call it Wynot and be done with it. Depending on which version you read, this was either said in exasperation or in genuine good humor. Either way, it worked. The community is small, no incorporated government, no formal municipal services beyond county provision, and sits in the rural Piedmont region of central North Carolina. It has a church, some residential areas, and the kind of low-key agricultural character common to rural Randolph County. The name is its primary point of external recognition. Wynot Road is the main address for much of the community, and driving it is the kind of experience that reminds you that American road naming has a long and occasionally inspired tradition. Randolph County itself contains a number of interesting small communities and was one of the early centers of the North Carolina furniture-making industry. Wynot does not appear on most tourism maps. It just exists, named after the moment someone stopped arguing, which is honestly a better founding story than many places can claim. Number 3. Nimrod, Minnesota. Nimrod is a small, unincorporated community in Wadena County, Minnesota, with a population of around 70 people. It was named after the biblical figure Nimrod, described in Genesis as a mighty hunter, a name that carried entirely different cultural weight in the 19th century than it does today, when it has become a general term of mild insult, largely due to its popularization by Bugs Bunny, who used it sarcastically to describe Elmer Fudd's hunting abilities in a cartoon that aired in 1955. The result is a small Minnesota farming community named after a hunter king from the Book of Genesis that now carries the inadvertent association with cartoon ineffectiveness. The residents of Nimrod are, by all accounts, unbothered. The town has a community center, some agricultural activity, and the kind of tight-knit small-town character common to rural Minnesota communities. Wadena County and the surrounding region in north-central Minnesota is lake country, with substantial outdoor recreation in hunting, fishing, and forestry. The Nimrod name fits its original context. The area was genuinely significant hunting and trapping territory in the 19th century. The Bugs Bunny problem is an artifact of 20th century popular culture that the town has chosen to absorb without complaint. Minnesota nice applies apparently even to being accidentally associated with a cartoon character's punchline. Number 2. Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. Medicine Hat is not a particularly small town. It has a population of around 65,000, making it a mid-sized city by Alberta standards. But it earns a place on this list because its name is genuinely distinctive and its history is legitimately interesting. The name comes from a Blackfoot word, Samus, which referred to the headdress worn by medicine men of the Cree people. The area was significant in Indigenous history, and the name reflects that history directly. What made Medicine Hat famous beyond Alberta was a comment by Rudyard Kipling, who visited in 1907 and wrote that the city had all hell for a basement, a reference to the enormous natural gas deposits that lie beneath the surrounding area. Medicine Hat has been extracting and using local natural gas since the late 19th century, and for much of its history, energy costs for residents were remarkably low as a result. The city operated its own natural gas utility for over a century. The city also has one of the largest collections of teepee-shaped structures in Canada, a working agricultural economy, a significant pottery tradition, Medicine Hat was historically known as the pottery capital of Canada due to the clay deposits in the region and a baseball team in the Pioneer League. Kipling's "all hell for a basement" quote has been used in local marketing for over a century. When a Victorian-era author gives your city a tagline that good, you use it. Medicine Hat also has the distinction of being one of the sunniest cities in Canada, averaging over 2,500 hours of sunlight per year, more than Miami, by most calculations. The combination of abundant natural gas, abundant sunlight, and a location in the agricultural heartland of southern Alberta made Medicine Hat one of the more self-sufficient small cities on the continent for much of the 20th century. The pottery industry that once defined it has contracted, but the city's energy infrastructure and agricultural base remain. It is a working city with a remarkable name, a Kipling endorsement, and more sun than it has any business having this far north. Number 1. Civic, California. Civic, pronounced Zy-E-Zix, is an unincorporated community at the edge of the Mojave Desert in San Bernardino County, California, and it holds the distinction of being the last place name alphabetically in the United States, which is the entire reason it exists. The name was invented by a man named Curtis Howe Springer, a self-described minister and radio personality who homesteaded the site in 1944, declared it a health spa and mineral springs resort, and named it Zis specifically so that it would appear last in any alphabetical listing of American place names. Springer operated the Civic Mineral Springs and Health Resort for decades, selling various health products and broadcasting religious programming from a radio station on the site. He was eventually prosecuted by the federal government in 1974 for fraudulent use of public land. He had never actually obtained proper legal title to the property and was removed from the site. The buildings he constructed, including a small hotel and a chapel, were transferred to California State University, which operates the Desert Studies Center there today. The Desert Studies Center is a legitimate research facility used by university students and researchers studying the Mojave ecosystem. The site includes Soda Lake, a dry lake bed that fills seasonally, and is one of the better locations in the region for desert ecology fieldwork. So Civic started as one man's deliberate attempt to alphabetically outrank every other place name in the country, became a fraudulent health spa, got seized by the federal government, and is now a university research station. It is also still, definitively, the last word. Curtis Springer himself is worth a moment. He operated his Springs Resort for 30 years, broadcasting radio programs under the name of the Reverend Dr. Curtis Howe Springer, though his religious and academic credentials were, to put it charitably, unverified. He sold treatments and remedies for various conditions at the resort, claimed the mineral springs had curative properties, and maintained a devoted following among people who made the drive out into the Mojave to take the waters. When the federal government moved against him, he was in his 70s. He left the property and died in 1985. The name he invented to win an alphabetical argument outlasted him by decades and will almost certainly outlast whatever comes next. As monuments go, it is genuinely unintentional, but it works. If this one was worth your time, hit that like button and subscribe. North America has more of these than any map is willing to admit.